Right now, I'm going to ask Dr. Hinkle to respond to his own question about what do you think our role is, and tell us a little bit about what your work had been. I understand you're a retired psychologist, but you've worked in what?
I did my internship at the Ohio State University Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation, which led to about a 17-year career in rehabilitation. And after that, I went on, and like Dr. Strickland, worked in the prison system for about 10 years before I retired.
Oh, good. Mm-hmm.
When I was involved in the rehab center, I had an interest in health psychology. So my question about the involvement of government and the interplay between government and psychology made me wonder what you could foresee that psychologists could contribute in the way the government functions, let's say in the promotion of health care, with dietary and exercise credits, much the way that a big business gives employees credit for having a wellness program. And if you participate in a wellness program, you get some benefits and some perks from the business. So how could the government incorporate some of these rewards and policies that would encourage that? Or you mentioned conservation or environmental issues. How could the government encourage people to reduce their energy consumption and to be more conscious of the environment, those sorts of things? Now, I heard you say earlier that people often were not impressed with actual research evidence, and they often just go on their own opinions and past experiences. But given that psychology does have scientific data to contribute, how could they implement that into governmental policy and provide benefit to everyone? So that takes us much further than just delivering mental health services or even health services. But my interest was to see what you thought psychology could actually contribute to government policies that would benefit everyone in a lot of different ways.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think what you say is absolutely accurate, and because my view of psychology is that it is an effort to understand human beings and human behavior, and so all of those things that you mentioned, whether it's lifestyle issues or health issues, issues related to domestic violence or bullying in our schools, or the thing that's fascinating about psychology, it impacts all of life, so it's, there ought to be a role there, and I think there is. I think psychology has an impact that's not perhaps always understood as a direct link to what psychology has discovered through research and so on. The issue of groupthink, which we all understand, I think was at least partly responsible for us going to a war. Mm-hmm. And all of the incredible consequences that flowed from that. In terms of cost, financial cost, loss of human life, the disruption within the society. My personal feeling is that groupthink is a real phenomenon, and oftentimes not just the political infrastructure, but the media gets caught up in all this. And I mean, as an example, I think it's happening right now in terms of what we are emphasizing nationally as the biggest problem that many people refer to as the biggest problem our country's facing, and that's the deficit. I don't think that's true at all. But somehow that seems to have been embraced by, by the media especially. And
although I'm
and
hearing a
becomes-
little bit now that suggests that at least some of the media is thinking, maybe not.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
hopefully they're breaking out of the
Right.
of the
Making
group
out
thing.
of-
But I mean, this is the 10th anniversary of the Iraq War. Thank God I voted no. But it was not a tough vote for me. I felt like I knew at the time that we were not being. I would go to these briefings. You'd have to take your cell phone out and everything. No phones, nothing. Go into these briefings and sit there and listen to Tommy or this General Thompson or whatever his name was, and Dick Cheney and Rumsfeld and all that talk. I remember in one of those briefings saying, do you have any evidence that Iraq was responsible for September the 11th? The answer was no. But that wasn't, that wasn't being shared with, it's just bizarre that even leaders of my own party, Dick Gephardt, who was my Democratic leader in the House of Representatives, went to the Rose Garden. And I remember him saying, there can be no daylight between our caucus and the president's position. I mean, talk about groupthink. And look what came out of that. And I don't think most people even understand the concept of groupthink. It's just where the individuality and individual thought and can be lost, basically. And we get caught up in something that is almost divorced from reality.
Well, I keep reminding myself that half the population is below average in intelligence.
Yeah. But
So,
I mean, it's a good point you raise. But some of the brightest people that
Still get
exist
caught
on
up.
the face of God's earth were caught up in that.
yeah.
And so, I think a phenomenon like groupthink is not related to intelligence. But it can have such serious consequences.
Right.
And
Well, our time is just about up, but I had a thought too as you were talking about that behavior is so important, that maybe we can have people have a chance to experience something different than they've had before. This thing of everybody's coming out of their own experience, and Portman recently, out of his own experience, has changed his mind on the gay issue. So I think if you can allow people to have more experiences than they've had, it makes a difference. And I don't know if psychology can do more of encouraging people to have a wider experience than they've
I think
had.
psychology has got to challenge assumptions. I'm so disturbed with what's happening with education in this country, both at the K through 12 level and higher education. And there's a tendency on the part of business people to assume that they know more than they know.
Oh yes, I've noticed that myself.
And you talk about bright people. Bill Gates is a bright guy, and he does wonderful things with his money. and with Warren Buffett's money, does wonderful things. But I think he is so far off base when it comes to the way he's pushing a lot of education thought and education development in this country. And we're becoming less individualistic in the way we approach teaching and learning, more mechanistic, adopting a more manufacturing model of education, much less.
Yet individualism has been such a strong value in this country.
But not in education. I mean,
I think
every
we
kid's
could
got
maybe push it in that direction.
I'm sorry?
Push it in that direction, reminding people that individual abilities and encouraging them has been the foundation of our country.
It has been, obviously. I think it has been. But, I see us moving toward a sameness when it comes to what we want in terms of educational outcomes. The things that I think are important in learning, enjoyment, is really being squeezed out of the curriculum.
Right.
And I think psychology can be, effective in trying to point out some of these directions that I think are really harmful. I think we're squeezing creativity and innovation out of the learning experience.
Right. I agree.
And that's certainly an area where psychology could and I think should be influential in what's happening.
Do you think year-round schooling would be helpful, which I think you proposed at one time?
What's that?
Year-round schooling?
I like options. There's a middle school here in Ohio, I even forget where it is now, that has year-round schooling. I went there, the teachers loved it, the kids loved it, and the parents loved it. And I was told that when they first proposed it, there was just such pushback. But parents are now saying we can go on vacation when it's cooler, when it's cheaper. It's just an option, and there's less of an extended period of time in the summer. I mean, there's still summer vacation, but it's less of an extended period of time when we ought to have I mean, I remember my own educational experience, and it was primitive. Those first 4 years, one school, one teacher, outdoor toilets and all that. But there was something experiential about it. That was to this day is meaningful to me. And,
well, I think we need to wrap it up, but thank you so much, Ted. I'm really glad to hear from you and all your thoughts.
I don't know if you got anything you wanted.
Yes, we did. It was great. Thank you very much.
Why don't you give the date and time on the record too?
Okay, yes, I should. It shows up on the screen, but I don't know if this is March 20th, 2013, and we've been here from about 1:30 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
So 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when someone may be looking at this, they can determine whether or not my commitment to help Hillary Clinton become president
works, whether it works.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Thank you very much to you all.
Thank you, Jane. That was